Good evening. My name is Tenku Ruff. My home temple is in Japan. I practice there. My teacher is Tessa Yamamoto Roshi in a very small area of the mountains of Nagano Prefecture in Japan. I currently live in New York City and have a sitting group in northern Westchester County. So I wanted to talk today about intention and making mistakes and how those go together. And then I'll lead into what Reverend Chimio was talking about and how identity ties into that. So, I'm going to start with a story. And I chose this story because it's a hard story for me to tell. So one of my identities is I'm sort of a perfectionist. So I don't really like making mistakes. So therefore, making mistakes has become a really vital part of my practice. and just learning to be comfortable. I don't know if I'll ever be comfortable making mistakes, but learning how to do it and just to try again. So there's a line from a Zen koan that I really like, and I think of it as my theme song, kind of. It's it goes not falling, not ignoring, two faces, one die. Not ignoring, not falling, 1,000 errors, 1,000,000 mistakes. So the last part in particular, I think of 1,000 errors, 1,000,000 mistakes. Every time I do it, I'm like, oh yeah, 1,000 errors, 1,000,000 mistakes. So I wanted to talk about that in particular in relation to something that happened to me a few months ago in New York. So I took the train into the city because I live just north of New York City in Westchester County. So I took the train into the city and I didn't take it at a usual time. So we had a different conductor from usual. And I sat down and, as you do, it was a pretty crowded train. So across from me was an older guy, kind of heavy white guy. And then there was a woman here, probably a few years older than me, Latina woman. And then there's me here, white woman. And there's an empty seat right there. So we're in those four seats facing each other. So I'm sitting there and really focused on what I'm doing and really, you sort of separate yourself out when you're on the train because you have stuff to do still and you can use that time or maybe you don't want to interact. So I think, as I recall, I was writing a letter that day and was writing and I was writing in Japanese. So I was using a dictionary and really focused, but my dictionary is in my phone. So probably I was looking at other things sometimes along the way. I'm really in there. And I heard a noise. We pulled into a stop, and a guy runs onto the train. And he's running. He's all out of breath. And he plops down in the seat across from us right there. So again, there's older, very large white guy, me, not so tall, a little older Latina woman, and the new guy is an African-American guy with a purple shirt. He's wearing a tie, and like I said, he's out of breath. So, what am I going to guess? He's out of breath. He's wearing a tie. Probably he's going somewhere. And it seemed like he ran to the train because he's out of breath. And so, our seat was pretty near the door, so he really plopped down right away. So again, I'm just, doing my thing. And the next thing I know, I hear a noise and I look up. The conductors come through and don't really pay attention at first until the tone gets really louder. And what I saw by the time I looked up is the conductor standing there. His name is Scott. He's got a little name tag. And he's got blonde hair. He's a white guy with like a crew cut. And he's berating purple shirt guy, the new guy on. And he's saying, "Oh man, you got on the wrong train." And he's like, "Now I got to charge you extra." And so like my ears peaked up and I was like, wait, he got on the wrong train. All right. So then he's like, you got to be more careful. You got to really be more careful. And I looked up and the conductor is probably the same age as the purple shirt guy in the tie. And I don't know what's going on. And I'm sitting there and I'm wearing robes. I'm a little conscious of that. So what do I look like if I say something, if I speak up? Because it's not just me, it's also this sort of uniform that we wear. So I still don't quite understand what's going on. And so the purple shirt guy just kind of shrinks a little, and he pays the penalty fare. And I'm not even sure where his real train was. It was clear he was on the wrong train. So I'm thinking, crap, maybe he's late now, or maybe something's going on. But I felt really confused. And so what did I do? Did you see the YouTube video that was on the subway where there's a woman and she stands in between a really angry woman on the subway? Mm-hmm. And so I stood up and I was like, Scott, that's not right. That's just like my superhero fantasy of myself. I didn't do that. But later, I wish I had done that. What I did is I didn't do anything in the moment. I didn't know what to do. And then I felt horrible about it because that's not what I imagined that I was going to do. I had already planned out in my head that I was going to be just like that woman on the subway. She was so brave and so inspiring. And then I was just so crushed that I wasn't her. So I was just like, holy crap, who am I? I'm supposed to be a Zen priest and do nothing. So I finally, it was really painful. And even now I'm telling you, and I feel like I want to go into shame and feel ashamed, which can be a good clue, right? But I think we have to be really careful not to go down that, because what is shame? It's all about me. I messed up. I did the wrong thing, just like Reverend Chimio was saying, all about our ego, our identity. I'm a good person. I'm not like that. I. So thought about it, I wrote down the name Scott. And I looked at him again and I was like, okay, all right. He has a crew cut. He's standing up. I'm sitting down. He's a man. I'm a woman. And to be frank, I was a little scared to stand up. It's still not right. So we pulled into the next stop, and purple shirt guy, I saw him gathering his things. So finally I reached over to him and I said, hey, I saw what happened and that wasn't right. And he looked at me and looked at my face and connected. And he said, yeah, I don't know what was going on with him. And I said, I don't either, but I just want to say I didn't say anything, and I want you to know I'm sorry. And the next time I see that, I hope it's never, but if I do, then I promise you I'll speak up. And he was like, thank you. So it really shifted. And then there's a connection there between he and I. And then I hear something, and the woman here, she speaks up. And she said, yeah, that wasn't right. And you could see for her a sense of relief. How's she going to speak up, right? I mean, I guess we were all waiting for the guy across from us to speak up because he's big, you know, and he's white, and, you know, he's like, to me, in my imagination of the way the world should be, he had the least to lose. But, you know, it's just my imagination. So she's relieved, and she said, yeah, that's not right. And then, you know, the guy does look up, and he nods. He didn't talk, but he nods. He did something. And something happened to the four of us in that car where we came together. So the purple shirt guy gets off the train. And I was like, okay. I went and said something, you know, when I got in. So I didn't do it in the moment. But after I went up to in the train station, and I asked to speak to the station manager. And I said, hey, I don't know what was going on, but this wasn't right. And I saw it. And, you know, I didn't say anything in the moment, and I wish I had. But I just want you to know this is happening. So I did. Moving on. And I think that's how we do. We try our best, and we make an intention, and we mess up. And instead of getting stuck in, I'm not like that, I'm a priest, and I'm not a racist, and I'm, you know, me, we catch it right where we can. Just catch it, and then repair, and then go a little further. So repair, catch it, sorry, I'm really sorry. Repair, and go a little further. I promise I'm not going to do that again. And so I came home, and I told my husband, I told him what happened. And I said, look, I want you to know that this happened today. And I want you to witness that this is my promise, that that's not going to happen. If I see that again in any way, that I promise you I'm going to speak up. So I made a little like both extra eyes watching me, and an extra container of accountability, and also, to be frank, an extra container of safety, because it's a lot easier to do if we come together and do it. If just one person of those three, you know, the three of us, had said something, maybe me, then maybe the guy would have spoken up, and maybe the woman would have spoken up. But when all of us are silent, then that makes it easy to continue it. So we mess up, we make repair, we make a new intention. And I think that's how our life really goes. It doesn't matter what. I mean, I use this example, like I said, because it's hard for me to talk about. And I want to both show myself that I can talk about it, that I don't have to be perfect. And I want to show all of us that we can talk about the things we do that don't come out in the way our imagination thought it was going to be. Because, you know, I was going to, you know, do Zazen and experience oneness with the universe and never make another mistake. But that's not how it goes. It's 1,000 errors, a million mistakes. We do it over and over and over. And that's actually the practice. It's not the perfection. It's the pulling back from there. The action of coming back to center is where the real work is. That pull back. Yeah, we can make these bubbles, as we call them, around ourselves, these circles of protection that we call identity. And we can think that that's something safe and real. But the truth is that ego is what's holding us back from true connection, through true interconnectedness with the world around us, with the people around us. And as Reverend Chimo was saying, that interconnectedness, I with all beings, will be awakened. me together with all beings, not me. So there really isn't me. And try to pull out me, and you're not going to find something that's separate from everybody else. It's just not possible to do. Just keep pulling that thread and see what happens. Try pulling. So when I was at Hoshinji Monastery, where Reverend Lien was as well, Harada Seke Roshi used to always say, if we think we understand something, then let that go. And if we don't understand something, then we have to let that go. So if we think we understand or we don't understand, we're still holding on to the idea of understanding. And we're holding on to the idea of I. So he said, let that go. Let everything go. Let go of understanding. Let go of I. And then let go of letting go. So I think that can go back to this story. If I think I, Tenku, am not a racist, then I can let that go. But if I think I am a racist, I can let that go too. Because the idea of racist, not racist, is still clinging to an identity that belongs to me and disconnects me from every other sentient being and the floor and all the people around me. So even let that go. So just keep letting go. And then allow the true nature of our real connectedness hold us through this. Just like in the train, where the four of us, just a little, when one person broke the silence, then we could all start connecting, just like that. And you know what, like, I told you that wasn't my usual train. But that day I was walled off, right? Completely separated myself. I thought about that too, because I took that train more later. I was taking a class. And the next time I rode the train, I saw him, Scott. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to watch him. He's going to do it again. I'm going to catch him. And I'm going to make up for my terrible mistake. Poor guy. And you know what? What I saw that time was he was really sweet to everybody on the train. And there was a woman trying to get on with a wheelchair, and he went and picked it up for her. And so I was like, also stuck in my idea of what I thought he was. I don't know what was going on for him. The woman in the wheelchair was white. So that idea of racism remained. Maybe he was having a bad day. Or maybe he really did feel terrible at having to charge this guy extra money and sort of took it out on him a little too much. But, maybe he felt, I don't know. But what I do know is that I already memorized his name tag, that I started talking to him. And just, because I'm kind of recognizable. So he would say good morning, and I would say good morning, and I'd say, hey, Scott, how you doing? And he'd be like, oh, hi. And I realized that if I hadn't been so walled off in the first place, if I had lifted my head up and been aware of who's around me and maybe said hi to him in advance, then there's a better chance I could have said something in that moment. It wouldn't have been this scary guy with a crew cut. He would have just been Scott. And maybe that would have given me the window to say, hey, Scott, what's going on? You look really tired today. Or, hey, Scott, he's out of breath, Can I help? Can I pay for his ticket instead? Or anything. But even just a human contact, even just me sitting there, if he knew me, he's less likely to do that. And this is how we're interconnected. And this is how that really matters, how we treat each other. So we can't do this on our own. It's just too hard. It's also impossible, but it's on a more everyday level, it's just too hard. But if we can come together around shared understanding of our humanity, of our mutual humanity, of our interconnectedness, then we can do anything. Really. There's so much more power in the collective voice than in just one voice. That's sort of what I was thinking about today. Thank you for allowing me to practice making mistakes in public.
I'm going to push that back so I can see it. The clock. And then, are there any questions to either Reverend or both? Anybody? If you're online and have a question, you need to speak up. Here.
I was going to ask whether you had the chance to connect to Scott, so I appreciate that you actually filled that part. Thank you.
I'll ask a question. No, maybe not a question. It's more, the thing I think about that story is, where's that? I wonder, in my version of your story, because now it's my version, right?
Right.
I would ask Purple Shirt, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Can I help in any way? Or is there a way that I can support you in this? And I'm thinking out loud. Like I said help, and then I didn't like that word so much, right? So, yeah, I think there's that sense when we're in the power position that sometimes we think, I know how to fix this. So I would, I wonder if that came up for you. I guess
In that moment?
Yeah.
It was hard. He was really embarrassed in the actual moment. So I didn't know if speaking
is
and
your observation.
His body language was really shrunken, like this, and his head was down. And so I don't know if it was embarrassed, but he wasn't looking up. So he was like this. And the guy's yelling in his head. He wasn't yelling. He was speaking loudly in his head. So I think that's an interesting thing for me to consider. I will say that afterwards, about a couple of weeks ago, the Southern Poverty Law Center released guidelines on bystander intervention. And it was really helpful to have that knowledge. Because they said sometimes you can make a situation worse by, just like you said, by thinking, I know what the best thing to do is. But they had some ideas that I never thought of too. You can create a distraction and draw attention away. Like accidentally drop something, or yell, or like you fell down. So I was like, the necessity of solving the problem doesn't belong to me. And I have to learn how to hold the big picture. And they also said you really shouldn't intervene if the risk of your presence may inflame the person. So I was like, that's interesting. But they said, an alternative is to record it. not an alternative. They get 4 choices. And number 3 was report it. Not to me, that in the moment, that felt really lame. But maybe it was, I don't know, you know. But I hear what you're saying, that to think that it's my decision is also an ego.
Well, our ego is always there, so it isn't about how do we lose it. I think, or, you know, having come from a background of violence against women and children, you know, when you see something in the street, you're always taught to address the women, see if they wanted help, assistance, and how they want it, as opposed to just thinking, you know, and sometimes they're like, leave me the fuck alone, everything's fine, and then you just have to say, that's where things are. So it doesn't, it's difficult without.
But what if you dropped your ice cream on their foot? You know, like, what if you're holding an ice cream and you're like, oh, and then the guy's like, oh, you dropped your ice cream, and she's like, can take a breath, right?
Yeah, so it could be that too. Yeah.
This is Unsen. I have a question.
We're not taping anymore, right?
Oh, no, we're still taping.
Oh, we're still taping, okay. Unsen, are you okay with just, okay, we'll take out your name if you want. All right.
Oh, you weren't taking names? Oh.
No.
I'm quite confused.
We don't usually try to put the students' names on the.
Okay.
Okay, it's all right. I'll check with you. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, my question was kind of related to Reverend Lien's question or comment. You mentioned in the story that purple shirt, kind of, or purple tie, I can't remember whether it was the tie or the shirt, that you had a moment of connection with him.
Yeah.
And I was curious to understand how you knew there was a connection. What was it about that moment that seemed like you connected somehow?
Thank you. I leaned over and lightly touched his arm to get his attention, and he looked up, and when we talked, we looked in each other's eyes, and he said thank you, which I think I might have left out of my story, because I didn't feel like I deserved his thank you at that time. But he said thank you, and I was like, no, I wanted to accept the gratitude and not dismiss it, and at the same time, I felt like I needed to be thanked. So we sat there for a few minutes and just made eye contact. And then before he got off, he leaned over and he said it again and made a little wave. So it was the body contact, body language, I guess.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a comment, and I'm fine with the tape. That's fine. Thank you for your stories and your share. I can't help but feel so moved by what you just shared, and I can't help but think that I have manifested in many different ways as a total dick in my life, like Scott. And I can't help but feel so much gratitude that there are people in this world like sanghas that can actually reflect on stories and happenings like that as if they're like great teachers. I think that's what I'm feeling right now, is kind of like an onion. Like I'm full of so many layers, where I intertwine a dark layer as well, and how that can also be a teacher for people I don't even know. And then there might be a big picture up above that I'm being used as a teacher in that moment, and my dickery is intentional. So I'm just completely moved right now. I don't even make any sense other than I'm appreciating the swirl of who I am, even in the midst of those moments of poor judgments and not treating people how they should be treated. Not how I want to be treated, but how they should be treated, how they want to be treated, which evokes empathy and understanding of another person. So I'm just sitting with this, and I want to thank you. It was totally, for lack of a better word, enlightening for me to hear this and recognize how in my worst, darkest moments of being a human being, it might have been a great teaching tool for somebody else. And to recognize that my mistakes might have been intentional, unknowingly. I don't know.
Or a teaching tool for ourselves. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you.
It's almost 9, and I wonder if I could ask you a question. So I know you, so when I had the question first, I know you did touch on it at the end, and I'd like to hear a little bit more, because I know, of course, our practice is to let go of boundaries, including sense of self and how we're describing all that, and know that connectedness or the lack of boundary. And in my experience, and a lot of convert Sangha, which is where most of my practices have been, the sometimes explicit and mostly implicit, as in like a big truth that the letting go is into looking like the person that's on the podium, which is usually a white male. So, and that's the letting go into, like into the, as in this culture, the whiteness is where, like, that's the American, or that's the non-foreigner for us immigrants. So what might you say, what could be said to a person of color who's struggling practicing in that kind of a container, even though there's that understanding that on a certain level I wanted to say, well, it doesn't matter the color your skin is of, and in a way it's about knowing that it matters completely, and there's something else I like to say. And yet when you're sitting across from whiteness that says this is letting go into, then how would you?
Let me see if I understand what you're saying. I'm hearing you say something that akin to assimilation, into becoming one with whatever is around you, and whatever power is around you, which happens to be the white male idea. That's a false idea too. Something that needs to be let go of, because that's not real either. The true person, whenever how can I put this? It's not about being a brown-skinned person or a white-skinned person. It's about a person who happens to have brown skin or whatever, and that whatever that looks like has no real set identity, no real set conglomeration of things. It's getting late, y'all. Has no real set attributes. We are not one thing. We are not one thing from one minute to the next, and neither is that quote unquote ideal of a white person or whatever it is that is there, but we need to find out who we really, truly, simply, are being at this particular time. If we were to not have bodies, I don't know if you can think of that concept. Let's go science fiction for a minute. If we didn't have bodies, if we were just this fluid bit of, air or whatever, without color, without shape, if we were clouds, which in a sense we are. When we talk about being monks, we talk about being unsui, which are clouds floating away, changing every minute. In 1 minute you're vapor, 1 minute you're rain, 1 minute you're dispersed by the mountain you just ran into. If we were that, what is the nature of that cloud? But in truth, that's what we are. You have this we're just a minute of conditions coming together and then dissolving. Hard to think of, because we do have egos, and we do have, we are attached to this minute, that this body is. So it's very hard to really know the fluidity of what of being. And it's hard for me to talk about this because I can go on all night. But the true freedom is the realization of that. That identity is not true. It is not permanent. It's all about impermanence. It's all about this freedom that is really there underneath all of this clinging that we have to identity, to and the fear that comes with that clinging. So no, it's not, somehow assimilating, blobbing into this idea of a white world. It's really allowing yourself to not hold on to any of that and just be what you are in this particular moment, like a cloud. And that's not to ignore what's going on around you, but you deal with what's going on around you with the understanding. And that means that you are ultimately free from that fear and anger. You're ultimately free from that hell that you can create for yourself, that we create for ourselves in those in this world, period. It doesn't say any of it is right or just or any of that, but we still need to be full people. We still need to be free in ourselves in a dharmic sense. We need to be free in order to deal with that, in order to be able to stand up and speak, and protect and show solidarity with each other. We have to, the courage, we like to call it courage, like it's some, thing that comes to, like it's something that is unusual. It's not, because courage doesn't come from being a superhero. It comes from being a a free person in yourself.
Yeah.
Where you can do that, stand up and, no matter what happens, you can face Scott and say, Scott, that's wrong, and whatever consequences come from that, you can move with those consequences. Like she said, if she maybe had stood up and, maybe Scott's having a bad day, or maybe Scott is just a little disrespectful of everybody, we don't know. It's not even a matter of that. But your freedom to stand up and be there for another person who is suffering comes from the understanding that this self is free to do that, and free to move into whatever whatever conditions are going to come up from the stirring of that, other cloud over there. So, I don't know how to. I don't have the poetry for, Dogen or whatever, and I don't have my Dogen, look in front of me to tell you the more clear words than that. But yeah, it's about. It's not about becoming something else or bleeding into something else. It's becoming and freeing yourself from those boxes.
All right. Thank you.